Hello everyone, this is Colin once again. I've been requested by a individual here on YouTube to make a video response to one clip. It's 2 clips out of 5 of the David Wood debate with the individual who runs the website called Answering Christianity, and I'll provide links to this website and things like this. Now, David Wood is a Christian apologist. He lives in my state of California, and the topic of the debate was, is Muhammad a true prophet? Or was Muhammad a true prophet, rather? Now, I've written down the points that David Wood has made in his video. Now, granted, I do understand that I'm responding to a video that's right in the middle of the debate, and I believe this is when David brings up, excuse me, Mr. Wood brings up certain points against the idea that the prophet Muhammad is a true prophet. So I don't know what the Muslim apologist's response is to any of these claims, but the individual on YouTube here asked me to make this video and to throw my 2 cents into talking about what Mr. Wood brings up. Now, Mr. Wood and many Christian apologists like him, they they have a problem because they don't cite all of their sources. They make claims that do not have any sort of historical backing, and really it's just conjecture. And if you're going to be talking about this subject in an academic sort of way, you cannot just say, well, we can assume this, and this, because that would just be an assumption without any sort of historical claims. And I've seen many Christian apologists make these sort of claims. What I mean by this is that he starts off by saying that he knows that the Talmud, the apocryphal stories of Jesus, such as the infancy, Jesus talking in his infancy, the making of birds out of clay, were actually around in the Arabian Peninsula, and that these made it into the Quran. Now, see, Mr. Wood gives no evidence for this. He gives no evidence that the Prophet Muhammad actually uh, heard these stories. There is no evidence for that whatsoever, but see, Mr. Wood wants us to think that that is the case. And I will be providing links to IslamicAwareness.org, where they basically refute in their articles the idea that Muhammad ripped these off and plagiarized from other sources. He says that the Sabians that are mentioned in the Quran prayed 5 times a day, and the Muslims stole this. Really? Again, I would like David Wood to bring up his references. The Sabians are actually a very, very unknown group in the Quran. In fact, in Islamic theology, we only really know about them that they are monotheists and that they worship God and believed in the last day. Who they were exactly is actually up to debate and theory. Some people think that this is alluding to the Essenes of the Ebionites, the Jewish Christians that were influenced and taught by John the Baptist and things of this nature, and that were with James the Just in Jerusalem. Others believe that this is just a group of monotheists in the Arabian Peninsula, but for David Wood to say that they prayed 5 times a day as if this is a matter of fact, I'm sorry, Mr. Wood, it's not. He then says the pagan practiced ablution or wudu, in fact, washing before they prayed towards Mecca, kissed the black stone, and fasted during Ramadan. Again, I would like to see David Wood's evidence for this. The only thing he said that I can agree with is that they prayed around the Kaaba, but they actually didn't view the Kaaba as a house of the one supreme deity. They viewed it as as a place to house their idols, and to say that they fasted during Ramadan and things of this nature. Again, I would like to see where he tries to where any of this evidence rests. So this is where he tries to say that basically Islam is a plagiarizing cult that brings all these things together, even though a lot of the things he just said has no evidence. He doesn't give any sort of references to any of the things that he just said. He then says in chapter 4, verse 3, that women are supposed to, that men can marry up to 4 wives, but Muhammad had more, and he says the reason for that was Surah 33, ayah 50. And he says that this was for sexual partners, but he ignores why Muhammad actually married many of the women that he did. Of course, does David Wood give any sort of historical background for any of this? No, of course not. Why would he? Because he wants to think that Muhammad, or that because he's trying to prove at this point that the Quran was just Muhammad's own brainchild, and that anything that he wanted to happen would happen. He says that he accuses Muhammad of lust and replies, let's see here, talks about many of the hadiths where essentially it's the story where he married his adopted son's wife, that his adopted son was going to get married. They ended up not getting married, and then he married her. And he says this was for lust as well. Again, I will post articles to this proves this. He then brings up many of the hadiths that have to do with Satan, and he quotes many from Sahih Bukhari. And again, people like Ahmad's Quran 3, they do the same thing. They make fun of this, they poke fun at these hadiths, and that's fine. You know, you can think that they're ridiculous, but Muslims actually believe this, and they both forget. Ahmad's Quran 3 and David Wood forget the concept of metaphor, where certain individuals certain Muslim scholars do view these as metaphorical statements, such as the concept of making wudu with your nose to get Satan out of your nose and things like this. Now, he quotes Mushin Khan, and it says that Mushin Khan's commentary on Sahih Bukhari is that we should believe that this is literal, but these are things of the unseen. Now, he doesn't say that this is a fact, but he says, you know what, we might as well believe in it, because how do we know for sure whether they're true or not? These are tidings of the things unseen. Then he goes on to say that Muslims reject the gospel of Jesus. No, they don't. They believe in the gospel of Jesus. Now, see, they reject certain concepts like the death of Jesus, the resurrection, the divinity, and David Wood says that this is something you can totally see in the New Testament. Well, I would say that's just his opinion, and that Muhammad did not come to destroy the gospel of Jesus. Muslims believe in the gospel of Jesus. They just reject some of these theological concepts, which I would argue, and many Muslims do argue, come after the actual teachings of Jesus. Now, Jesus said he warned against many false prophets. Now, see, David Wood is now confusing what John said in first letter of John as opposed to what Jesus actually said. Jesus actually said he warned people against false Christs that would come and say, I am the Christ, I am the Christ. Now, we know that Muhammad never actually said he was the Christ. He said that Jesus was the Christ. He's confusing his own New Testament where he says in 1 John, where John says many false prophets have gone out into the world. And actually, if you read the whole context of the first letter of John, John's convinced those prophets, those false prophets and antichrists, are already among the believers. So he's not prophesizing about 600 years after the fact. He's saying these false prophets are already in the midst of the believers, meaning the Christians. So I would encourage David Wood to go read his New Testament again. He comments, he sort of pokes fun at Muhammad's reaction at the advent of his prophethood. Yeah, he was petrified. This was a man who had lived a very normal life, and suddenly he's being called to be the messenger of God, and he freaks out by this, and he pokes fun at Muhammad for this. And I've seen other Christians do it as well, and I think it's really hypocritical. You're not analyzing this from a humanistic perspective, where you have someone who lives a completely normal life, he's 40 years old, and suddenly he's being told he's the final messenger of God. If someone came to you, like you, Mr. Wood, and suddenly told you you are the messenger of God, would you just sit there and go, oh yeah, sure, okay, that's cool, yeah, no problem? No, you wouldn't. And if you say that you would, you're a liar, because people would react in such a intimidating way that they were scared, and he didn't know exactly what was going on, because when Gabriel first comes to him in the mountain, and by the way, you say that, well, I don't know what happened to Muhammad in the mountain. Well, you're ignoring now Islamic traditions, which you yourself quote, which is Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. We do know what happened to him. There's evidence of what happened to him according to these traditions. And then you say, well, you know, how can I trust a man who thought that he was possessed and things like this? Well, yeah, at one point he did, but then God quickly tells him, according to the Quran, you're not demon-possessed. You are the messenger of God. And then he did accept his message. He was very intimidated, but he did accept it. Anyway, this is going to have to be in several parts, so this will be the end of part 1. And we'll be moving on to part 2, looking at David Wood's response, or excuse me, his opening remarks on, was Muhammad a true prophet of God? Thank you.